All right, another totally rewarding chats. I'm here again with Paul Reiman. So far this season, I have not been able to get rid of him. He shows up every time. How
I am
you
the
doing?
gift that keeps on giving, Sean. That's
That
for
is
sure.
true. It is a gift. It's been good. And speaking of time, I've known Pete Tiliakos. Great to have you for a long time. Super stoked to talk about. This is something that probably is not uttered a ton, but super stoked to talk about payroll.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
So that I don't mess it up, because you have a long, interesting background. Can you give us your kind of bio background where you're at now,
Yeah.
the starting point?
Yeah. Well, let's start with where I'm at now. So look, I'm an industry analyst. I've been an analyst now for about 10 years. I led HR tech and services research for Nelson Hall for about 5 of those. And then went on my own about 3+ years ago and launched Payroll Influences, where I really study the marketplace for payroll, right? I really try to stay on top of the pulse of the modern day practitioner and just tell their story, right? With the Payroll
Mm.
Profession Confidence Index. It's something that I really try to put a lot of effort and time into. And then, yeah, I mean, otherwise, I spend most of my time really working closely when I'm not researching buyers, working very closely with the vendors of the marketplace, advising many of them, big and small. Some of those are HCM, some of those are payroll providers, global payroll providers, global EOR providers, fintech, you name it. Anybody that builds something in and around payroll, or even on the core HR side, I do a lot of work there too. I have probably researched them, worked with them, maybe advised them, and in some cases help them with their go-to-market strategy in some regard. And some do content, right? You probably see some ebooks I have floating around out there. But what led to that? 20+ years, 30, almost 30+ years of being a practitioner, a consultant, and really being on all sides of the sourcing life cycle. I came up as a practitioner. I actually audited HR data in the military, of all places. I audited HR data in the Marine Corps in a shared service center, one of the first ever. I thought it was a white collar prison, to be honest. I had no idea that that was a career or a thing, but I look back on it now and I think like, man, it was really, really pivotal because it did show me like how important, your training and pay and entitlement data was so critical back then to them. And it is today to everyone.
Sure.
Right. But anyway, went from there into PEO and I worked for about 6 years at one of the largest PEOs in the country. And then eventually found myself at a very young age leading payroll for the Walt Disney Company and helped with their transformation in their shared service center that's still in place today in Celebration, Florida. And then later went on, back into the outsourcing world where I worked at IBM and TCS, eventually Deloitte, and then, became an analyst. So I've really been on all sides of this, right? Either a buyer, a practitioner, I've worked for a vendor, I've helped people people solve it as a consultant, and then ultimately now researching and helping really bring the voice of the practitioner and the buyer together with the vendors and hopefully building the right stuff and the best stuff we can to make their lives easier. So yeah, it's a great time to be in this space.
So I'm more curious, did Mickey and Minnie, were they more direct deposit or a check type of people when
No,
they got their checks?
I'm glad you asked that, Sean. No, back then, 20 years ago now, it seems, we tried to mandate direct deposit, but as you can imagine, that's a state by state sort of issue. And so we would not have been able to make Minnie or Mickey have direct deposit, but we would have persuaded them to do so.
Okay.
We tried pay cards back then. They failed miserably. They were way ahead of their time. We tried to do that for the cruise lines and it just didn't go over quite well. They really prefer cash and sending cash home to family members and that sort of thing. So yeah, but man, I've got a lot of great stories though from all that time. I learned a lot about a lot of different things, media and
Yeah.
entertainment and that
Well,
sort
it
of
is pretty interesting because my first thought went to Disney, but
thing.
then
Yeah.
as soon as you said they got the cruise line and they have media and
Uh,
like all the payrolling that probably does go around that is probably pretty mind blowing.
Yeah.
it is. The unions, I mean, just Hollywood in general is very much listen, I've been saying this since I became an analyst. If all this talk about the gig economy and the future of work, I think it's largely happening already on the backlot of Hollywood. I think a lot of the ways in which they have to do things, the way
Mm.
they source skills, the way they pay people same day, the way they fund, health insurance and that sort of thing, I think it's going to be largely that way in the future.
Hmm.
And I think you could solve a lot of it by going there and solving their problems.
Well, we have to get
Interesting.
to speed round. The whole gig economy is probably a session we need to
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
interesting. I mean, 20 years ago, everyone thought, there'd be, 5 or 10% of would be the core employees and everything else would be gig. And
Yeah,
we're nowhere near that yet
Yeah.
not
for
quite.
many
But
reasons.
Before you get to the speed run, though, Sean, so we have to do the human check. Because anybody who's been around payroll for as much as you have, means you've been yelled at a lot in life. Because
Yeah.
that's just how it is, right? Like
Yeah, but
payroll is the chair of the misery company. So like there must be like a stress managing hobby somewhere in your world to sort of make that tolerable.
yeah, fitting. Yeah. I would say I was. Sean mentioned that to me before the show. He said, we're going to ask you about your hobby, and I was like, well, so my hobby, if I had to say I had one, I've had to take a break from it from injuries, but I was training jujitsu for quite a while. Through
That's
my
a stress
40s,
managing
yeah,
hobby.
through my 40s, and I was an analyst during that time. I wasn't, I got out of the payroll game a long time ago. But yeah, man, I found I fell in love with it just from a fitness perspective, which was kind of dangerous. I ended up getting hurt because I was just overtraining. But yeah, man, Brazilian jiu-jitsu and MMA, I got into it. My son was really good at it. And yeah, it's a great place to blow off steam, but also a great place to just meet phenomenal people
I'm
too.
And a
100%
great way
sure
to
I do not want to do that with my son
yeah.
for many reasons. Him
Yeah,
being younger and fitter and in his prime age, that is not something I need to be doing when he starts to
yeah,
remember, you grounded me. Remember when
yeah,
yeah,
My son could probably strangle me.
And
Yeah,
he's been taught to do it. So
yeah.
it's ability and knowledge are
he's really
both
good at
there.
it.
So be
Yeah,
careful. Yeah.
Really quick, are you coffee or tea person?
man, I'm green tea.
Green tea.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
We're on a roll of tea drinkers, which
yeah.
is okay. One, maybe two words that come to mind when I say the word payroll.
Kinetic comes to mind for me. Kinetic. It's just always going. It's always moving. It's the, city that never sleeps, I guess you could say. The
Mm.
process that never sleeps.
Oh, that would have not have been in
Yeah.
my top words. First of
Yeah.
all, I'm just not as educated. That's a big word. But you have a weekend away, Pete. Would you
Yeah.
rather do it at a posh resort or rough it in the woods?
You know what? My family, my wife would not really be too good in the woods. So I'd have to go with the posh.
I'm gonna have to change. I don't know how to change this question, Paul, but the volume of people who are like, well, my spouse, which is cool
Not,
to see. I will say it's cool to see that they come into the equation. It could be worse.
yeah. My wife doesn't camp. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You'd have to ask a very aggressive question, which is basically, so I'm going to give you time away from your family.
Yeah.
Now, how are you going to spend
Yeah.
it?
It's interesting how many times it's come out.
You know what, man? I could go either way on that one. So, but yeah, I would love to, yeah, just get away, turn the cell phone off, go in the woods. That would be pretty cool. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's a good middle ground answer. So, based on this is going to air in a week or two, which is your favorite Christmas movie? Holiday movie, I should say.
Ooh, that's a great question. I love The Grinch, to be honest. I
Ah,
like The Grinch. Yeah, I like The Grinch movie.
We won't expand on this, but I'm going to add a sixth question because it is going to come up, I think, with the same
All
week.
right.
Without is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
I mean, yeah, I think it is.
Right.
mm.
I
Yeah,
think it
no, we're
is.
not going to expand more. Mostly because I believe that's so. Paul doesn't. We're just going to go to the next question.
Yeah, right. Okay, all right.
Take your
Uh,
Crunchy
victory,
or
Sean.
creamy peanut
Very
butter?
democratic.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Are you a crunchy or creamy peanut butter person?
Oh man, I like crunchy. Yeah.
Okay.
Probably
All right.
because I like to put it on bananas and things, and I guess maybe yeah. Yeah.
You put the peanut butter on the banana?
Yeah, sometimes I'll eat peanut butter and banana just together. Yeah.
Now, from an athletic standpoint, that is one of my post
Yeah.
training, whatever, creamy,
Yep.
It's
because
more, I've seen it the other way. Like my wife will put a banana into the peanut butter, right? Or you mix the two on a sandwich, but I've never seen like peanut butter directly applied to a banana.
oh yeah, I just take it out of
Yeah.
them, put it from the thing and put it on. I don't think I mean, this is like a good thing. I don't think banana is strong enough to dip into the peanut butter. That's
Yeah, I don't think that would work.
like
Yeah.
I don't know how
Single
where
dips.
you
Yeah.
put it.
Maybe
no,
apples.
Yeah.
I'm going to,
Apple.
look at that. Think apples. There you go.
Um,
Yeah.
So I wanted to have you on, Pete, when we
Yeah.
started scheduling this, and I knew Paul was like, "Yes, please." When we got this going, was you and I talked a bunch. We talked at HR Tech and some other places of this kind of relationship between payroll and comp. And just
Mhm.
in case you didn't Google or stalk Paul, Paul was a practitioner on the comp side prior, so it brings a unique perspective.
Very
And to
good.
be honest, having been in the dev side, mostly on comp and Ben, payroll was the place we sent data to be executed. So I kind of get the perspective. So how are you seeing it change and how do you see the relationship now and kind of loaded question to which we'll go
Yeah.
is how do you see it changing going forward? However you want to tackle that.
Well, look, I think we're still, I still get asked, everybody gets asked all the time, like, where should payroll report, HR or finance? I really don't think that really matters, right? What I think I've been noticing lately, more easily finding them, I wouldn't say it's like hard data I have, but just anecdotally, I notice that there are more organizations that are increasingly aligning payroll with comp and total rewards. In other words, comp and payroll, right? And saying, hey, let's create a pay experience
Mm,
sort of slant out of that. And I really love that. I think that that's, to me, that's differentiated. And look, the finance or HR thing, it really depends on your organization. I will always lead finance because I just feel that at the end of the day, you've got you've got the controllership element of this that has to be, especially in bigger companies, you've got to have that sort of oversight. But one of the things I just really love is this alignment that I'm starting to see happening. And what I think I like about that is in my research, the Payroll Profession Confidence Index, we have the last 2 years we've put that out. It's just started a year, the first year was 2 years ago. The first year we said, look, we're going to define what strategic looks like from payroll because we keep saying payroll has to be more strategic, HR's got to be more strategic. Well, what does that actually mean? So we defined that and we have something called the 5 pillars of modern payroll. And one of those pillars is helping to facilitate the modern pay experience, which is
mm,
not payroll by itself. It's payroll really is only at kind of the end game and the vehicle. But what else goes into that is that total rewards, that compensation, benefits, right? The visibility and the transparency of all of that, how well I'm able to understand why I'm paid, what I'm paid,
yeah.
my control over when I'm paid, right? So on-demand pay or direct deposit or cryptocurrency or whatever mode or method. All of that kind of shapes that pay experience. And so that's what I kind of am going back
Mm,
to now is I think I'm hoping what we're seeing are organizations thinking about that pay experience and saying, hey, let's bring these three parts together because it makes a lot of sense for what
yeah.
the mission they all have to ultimately deliver.
Yeah.
So
You know,
long answer there.
no, it's great. And so at my 3 corporate stops, once I did not own payroll and all we did was throw it over the fence. The
Yeah.
relationship was pretty messy. Another stop, I did not own payroll, but I was really close to the finance function that ran it. Personal bond, we both had adopted children and we bonded over that. And as a
Yeah.
result, the functions were tight. Third stop, I owned it. Lucky me. And what I learned through those 3 stops was actually nobody cares but me who it reports to, right? What people cared about is my check right? If there's a problem with it, how fast does it get fixed? And if I have a question about it, how accurate is the answer? That's
Yep.
what people care about. And it's more and I think that's what you're describing is this experience, right? Other than the,
Yeah.
frequency, modality, whatnot, but like the human side is it right? If I have a question, does it get resolved quickly and accurately?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Is it
don't care
trustworthy too?
if I'm talking to HR, I'm talking to finance, I'm talking to IT, if I'm talking to an outsourced company, I don't care.
Yeah.
I just want those 3 things.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
as comp people, what I did not realize is how important we were to that equation until I got closer to it, right? When I threw data over the fence, I didn't realize how hard it was for the payroll team to actually answer all the questions that they got until that partnership developed, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, who cares who it reports to? It matters how committed you are to getting those things right.
Right. Yeah. And when you call them too, I think they've got to be engaged at the right time. And too often that's too late. Right. And
Yeah,
payroll really ought to be there, front and center when you're making these decisions because there is an impact
totally.
to every one of these decisions where a person is involved. If there's no people, fine, maybe. But if there's a person, at least one person, you got to get them on the phone because there could be a ramification to that.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting because I think there's almost diverging forces. So the employee experience, I think, is bringing people together. You've got pay equity and transparency, and they have to do it. And the reality is, where people look at their pay is on their pay stub. It is probably the most. Anyone who thinks they're going to go to the comp department, they always go to the pay stub first. They go to the payroll app, and so there's all this opportunity for that. All these places have different, total reward statements, etc. But I would argue 90% of the people just go to the
Pay
payroll
stub.
app because they've been there every other week, monthly anyway. So
Yeah.
they go. And so that's driving them to work together to deliver that. The part that I think is interesting in all this, Pete, when we talked about like, where's the span of control, where's it reporting, and who owns it, is both groups, in my opinion, have always been this like, we want a seat at the table. Like, how long have we been hearing we want a seat at the
Yeah.
table? Payroll wants a seat at the table. HR wants a seat at the table. And they both have the opportunity to have the seat at the table. And they both have really cool analytics. And comp has this like market facing external labor market analytics. And payroll has like, this is literally the pay, what everyone's making and who they report to like stuff.
The actual,
Like, who own like, how can they and they both want a seat at the table, and to me, it's a little bit from the outside looking in, like musical chairs. Like, sure, but there aren't always just extra chairs at the table. There's maybe an chair at the table. And so who gets that as they go? And so I'm seeing this kind of,
Mm,
we want to work together, we have to play nice, but who gets a seat at the table? And so where does it end up reporting is kind of interesting too.
Yeah.
And I think, Paul, you can add some color to this. Comp is traditionally, or total rewards traditionally rolls up to HR, not finance. When they're in one place and you have one set of parents, I think it becomes easier. You don't have to go to the principal. You have a set of parents. When the finance is on one side and HR is on the other, then I think, they have to go to the CEO as the parental unit. And I think at some point they're just like, I don't care, make it go away as long as we're paying people. So that's the thing I think is really interesting with all this, because the upside is huge right now to the analytics.
mm,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't disagree, man. And I don't know that payroll has to have, or I mean, who cares whose table it is, right? I think at the end of the day, what I've been really seeing from the leaders who are doing the most impactful things in the companies that are very forward in this way are those that are kind of creating their own table, right?
mm,
And saying, look, we have this data that might actually be the most accurate data in all the organization, because if there's something that changes, most people call payroll first. And this data, if you pair this with your other workforce data, comp data, HR data, ops data, external data, there's something for this, right? There's something for you to do with this. And so what I think some of those leaders are saying is, hey, look, here's my table. Come and talk about my data. Let me talk about something that resonates with your world, that overlaps and is impactful for you, and get those champions to begin going and advocating for you that do have the seat at the table.
mm.
So there is a way, right? And I think, but I think the story is going to be told through that data versus maybe we're just complaining where we've, maybe in the past been a little bit emotional. Now it's much more of a look, here's the material impact of what these actions are causing or not causing, or whatever
Yeah.
the opportunity is. And they can make some real change. Yeah, on my podcast, HR and Payroll 2.0, we had Monica Miller. She is the head of payroll. She is the senior vice president of payroll and workforce management strategy for Compass Group. She has 500,000 people that she pays. And you listen to her talk, she has 5 data scientists in her team, embedded in her team, working on a multi-million-dollar opportunity of savings just from time leakage, just from labor errors,
Sure.
right? Of people clocking in inappropriately, or maybe fraud, any sort of things like that, right? And so that's just one element of their business, but you can imagine the impact that she has now
Mm,
from that investment, right? And that I think is the key, is that they're investing in payroll, and she's leading with all of that.
mm.
Yeah, it's interesting. I always say there's a system of record, but the system of accuracy is the pay card.
Yeah.
You're right. Like
Always.
off by 10 cents, they're getting a call. Like they're getting a
Yeah.
call everywhere
Yeah.
else. If it's off by thousands of dollars, no one would care, but you're
Yeah.
off by, 15, 20 cents. Somebody's in there,
Yeah.
figuring out what happened to pay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
system of accuracy.
Yeah.
One thing I found that made that or held that back for a while, and this has changed, but I want to hear it more from a real expert's perspective, was like the myth of the true global payroll, right? So comp at least could consistently produce global data, right? Because I know rate of pay for everywhere, exchange rates are easy. That was easy for me to say. This is what we are paying globally. The payroll person, it was hard for them to say that, in part
Yeah.
because it was actually like 37 different places, right? It was very rarely consolidated. How have you seen that? Because you've seen a lot going on here, right? Like the having access to globally consistent information has been hard for the payroll function historically.
Yeah. Yeah.
How is that changing? Is it finally coming true that there really
Yeah.
is like that global payroll that could solve that problem?
Yeah, I mean, we're leaps ahead of that, right? I mean, I think the investment in innovation just in the last 10 to 15 years alone has brought payroll way forward. It is possible now to get to a
Mm,
single data source and have a reliable access to that. Now, can you do it entirely with one vendor? Sometimes no. I'd say we're getting closer to unified capabilities where there are vendors that have 50, 60,
yeah.
70, working on 100 calc engines and have a unified capability that way. But still, there's going to be those gaps that are going to have to get filled. The problem with payroll is that historically, it's never been the first place any business said, hey, we're going to go and invest, right? You don't have people lined up outside the iPhone, the Apple store buying the next iPhone. Whatever, what are we on, 17, 18? No one's running around going, hey, we're going to get payroll 18. You guys, who's going to go get in line? You know what I mean? Like the CEO wants to see it by noon,
Yeah.
It's just never going to happen. And so what happens, especially in those global companies and in those, high speed, high movement organizations that are buying things and divesting things and merging, you're going to end up solving for payroll in a very catalyst way. In other
Yeah.
words, you're doing it as and when the pain emits itself, right? Like, oh, this failed, or we bought something, or oh, we're divesting something, so let's go deal with that region or that footprint. The problem is so many of the companies never really solve for all of it, and
Mm.
solving for all of it is painful. And especially when you're in contract, over here that's 3 years and this one's 5 and that one's 3, and they're none of them are really, you know what I mean? Like, there's just
Yeah.
this constant moving parts. And so what I think you're finding is there
Mm.
are more organizations now that core HR has become pretty much mandated. You've got to have a global central solution. That's sort of rippling out more awareness to payroll needing to follow suit and get modernized as well. So now that's why I think you see so many more options to either solve it with, some of the HCMs can solve it for you. And then others, they've offered you marketplace partners to take you as
Yeah.
far as you need to go. So yes, it's more possible than ever. Now, the reality is that most organizations aren't digesting it quite as fast as they could. Same could be said for many pockets of HR. You could say that for learning. You
Sure.
could say that for recruiting. There are a lot of organizations who are fundamentally on a modern core HR system, and then they have other parts of the platform that they've never touched. So there's a lot of opportunity there. So it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's available. It's possible. It's just, are you willing to go through the change and the pain in a
Yeah.
lot of people's eyes to get to that and digest and make that investment in that infrastructure?
It's
And it
almost like
feels
you
like
need a support group.
there was
Like,
a
oh,
nice global catalyst of investment too. I think COVID
Yeah.
and sort of
yeah.
the digital nomadcy, however you want to say that word,
Yeah.
right? Like, I know I've got people, it's through an EOR, but still same concept. Like, it's a global payroll at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've got people in different countries, and there's a calc engine in
Yeah.
lots
And
of
on the
markets through that provider
Totally. And
if you
on the
want it.
fintech side, I mean, I think we're seeing a lot of the digital money movement come into play, embedded finance, embedded payments, right? We're all doing it, right? You look at your own personal iPhone,
Yeah.
right, or phone, pull it out. You probably have a picture of your financial world made up through apps, right? PayPal and Robinhood and things. So it's just becoming the nature of the way we do things, and that means on-demand pay, right? Speed of payment. People want to settle fast. They want to fund fast. They want to be paid fast. Generations today expect you to do things, everything on demand. So I think that's just sort of sped up. Some of
Yeah.
this too is money movement, right? It's just that digitalization.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting to me because there's almost like a support group being built with comp and payroll, in that the ROI is it's hard to get to, and both groups, to be honest, have been their own worst enemy because
Yeah.
they've made it happen and done it in spite of not getting investment. And so between you'll get it done anyway,
Yeah.
and well, how's this going to change my bottom line? And I
Yeah.
do think there's some opportunities. I
Mm.
think you mentioned, Pete, like, hey, do you tie this to some of the teams that can pay same day, like our talent? Like, how do we tie it to the talent and the ROI? But I think both groups struggle with this. How do I tie new tools and tooling to ROI versus them using the money somewhere else in the business?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, look, yeah, so much of compensation is still being done on spreadsheets, just like payroll in a lot of in a lot of long tail places. Yeah, but the cool thing is, I think, is that both, I mean, I think are areas where people think it just happens, right? And you're right, they're victims of their own sort of success. Payroll gets sort of left to limp along a lot of times because they do pull the rabbit out of the hat. And so people think, well, if this is broken, why should we fix it? But one of the things I do think is good for comp and payroll both is the influx of strategic workforce planning. I don't know if you've noticed more of that coming online with HR. Dayforce turned it on. UKG's been doing it for a while. HiBob bought Mosaic to bring that in. So I think that that's good because I think that's going to bring more awareness to the fact that comp and labor and payroll and time and all of those things are going to be very important parts of that modeling and that insight. So I think you're going to see more attention to both of those data sets being used in that world too. You're going to have another set of eyes, I think, looking at that data than
Hmm.
just the HR world. More finance, maybe even more CIO type folks looking at headcount capacity and things like that. So yeah, I think it's good. I think it's all good. And when all of these towers of HR are leveling up, it's going to rising tides raise all boats.
Hmm.
When one does well, the other is going to get pulled up with it, right? So I think it's good.
What, just due to the timing of this episode, Pete,
Hmm.
you get to be our first person we ask, like, as you think about next year,
Yeah.
what's the thing that you're most excited about to see in the
Mm,
industry, and maybe the thing that you're most worried about over the next year? Those two things.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I have the same worries as everyone about AI, right? Are we kind of running off a cliff? Let's slow down. I don't think we can. You know what I mean? I don't know that we can. Let's don't throw the baby out with the bathwater just yet, right? I think there's a lot we need to figure out with this. Just structurally, even if we can get AI to do all of our monotonous work tonight, do we really want that? And how much of that do we need to have, managed in certain ways? And how do we prepare the workforce for that sort of a reality and change?
mm,
And the new skills that they're going to need. There's just so many layers to this. I hope we can slow down a little bit. That's what I fear. We're going a little too fast. What am I excited for though? I'm excited for more orchestration. I know that may sound like a marketing word, but I really do think, like, as a former practitioner of HR, I've led benefits, I've led payroll. I've worked through many a comp cycle with compensation, running bonuses and all kinds of things. It's hell, I know. But that's the stuff that I really want to see all the AI use cases begin to come together like a symphony, right? I mean, I really want to see the orchestration.
mm,
When I think about things, I bitch about this all the time on my podcast. I'm the biggest complainer about leave of absence.
mm,
I think it's the worst experience of all of the HR experiences. And I think back to, like, again, when I was a practitioner and we would send some poor executive first time mom out on a leave. And it's a horrible experience because she's trying to figure out whether or not she has to return her laptop or whether or not her building access is going to work. And it was just all these pieces and parts that at the end of the day, we couldn't have controlled in HR if we wanted to, because most of it wasn't in the system for us to control. It was in facilities or some other thing. And so those are the handoffs and
mm,
smoothing out of the friction that I want to see from orchestration, that I would really love to see for both the practitioner, the end user, but even also the manager, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're starting to see a lot of help for the frontline manager and people who are first time leaders. I really want to see that get better. So
mm.
yeah, I'm excited to see more orchestration, more of this stuff getting kind of strung together, if you will, use case to use case. And yeah, just making it easier for
Yeah.
people, man. This
It's
stuff shouldn't be so hard.
It's interesting because at my last corporate stop, when we changed payroll providers, when I was running
Yeah.
it, like I had this aha moment where I realized that payroll really is a process centric function, right? Like if you've got
Oh, yeah.
clean processes, it runs. And we didn't. And I learned that when you're going live with a new system. But that's what I hear you saying is like, can we harness the power of new technology to help us run better processes, right? To
Yeah.
make things simpler and instead of it being 4 handoffs, 3 different systems across 7 different departments to put
Right?
somebody on leave,
Yeah.
which is a pretty accurate description of the life, like, maybe that is a good can there be a robot portal, which, okay, great, congratulations, you're having your first child. Here's some things I'm gonna help you figure out, and I'm gonna communicate with behind the
Yeah.
scenes. You just keep
Right?
coming back to me. Like, that would be a
Yeah.
dream world, for a first-time parent to
Yeah.
have that simplified and
It's just a little smoothing out of the friction. You know what I mean? That's
yeah,
how I like to look at it. Like just stringing that together so it's not such a rough process.
yeah.
I mean, I'll take that back to comp and payroll. Like one step is
Yeah.
is just the amount of data, that the things the I wish or I anecdotally think that now the data could be smoother, and basically put together. And I like the way you talk about orchestrating the analytics. So bring me some of the business analytics to put alongside a comp that then drives
Mm,
payroll. That when you think about not being orchestrated, I think anecdotally people are like, well, that makes sense to do that. Everyone
Yeah.
understands how, but like we just can't fundamentally do that, because the thing with that always gets me with payroll is like, you're never more than 5 weeks away, like from the next one.
Yeah.
So like,
yeah.
so there's always this kind of like, I think, and I do think
Yeah.
it's one of the reasons they've always gone slower in the past. And I'll defend payroll and comp, generally on that side. And people are like, why aren't they more aggressive with tech, and why don't they test more stuff? I'm like, because if they don't do anything, no one's outside their office. And if it's wrong, I said, if your
Yeah.
payroll is wrong next week, will you wait 3 or 4 business days to get a note from HR, or will you
Yeah.
call HR?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, yeah, and it won't be 3 or 4 days, right?
Yeah. Closest to the pin is not good enough, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And so I think that's part of this, where they can start to organize data, and then they can make changes faster. But I think, to me on the outside is always like, that to me is why it's so scary in payroll and comp is like, if you do a great job, and I use payroll a lot kind of with IT, like when's the last time you heard someone send an email to payroll to be like, hey,
The
Pete, I
check
just
was
wanted to
right.
say thanks. I've
Yeah.
been paid
You
correctly
killed
for
it.
the last year. Like
You
this is
killed it on
my
my
job.
my net pay, right?
Yeah, you got everything was right for the last year. Thanks, man. Like, does that
Yeah,
email exist? Like,
right.
that's why I think it's hard for these organizations to say, well, I want to add in this magic data to then drive payroll because you're like, man, if
Yeah.
it's wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they have a daunting job, and look, I don't know if people realize this, but it doesn't matter the size of your company, and definitely in a publicly traded one. If payroll doesn't do their job right, people can go to prison. It really is serious. I mean, it happens too, right? I mean, and that's really serious, and that I don't know that a lot of executives understand that, and I think that they and not knowing that means that they operate sometimes in a danger
Yeah.
that they're completely unaware of.
Pete, have you ever been invited to career fair day?
Have
Yeah, don't
Yeah.
advertise payroll that
You
way,
don't
right?
advertise payroll. Yeah. Like, hey, here's a job. If you do great, no one will notice. If you do it poorly, you could go to jail. Come on.
He's not the payroll leader, but the payroll the executives, right? If they don't pay taxes,
Yeah.
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
No,
and
it's
that's
real.
serious. That would be a very very serious
Yeah.
extreme example, but it happens. It has happened.
But it is like that's when I picked up payroll and I got
Yeah,
it for the first time. I phoned my friend at the last company, right, and said, "Hey,
yeah,
now I own it, right? So now I get to do your job too. Haha, how fun
yeah,
will this be?" And she's like, "Here's the harsh reality. Like you could send people to jail. Same
yeah,
thing."
yeah.
And it was a little bit
Scary.
of a smack upside the head for a career comp person where we know it matters and it does, but the stakes aren't as high in the
Yeah.
moment as they are with payroll, right?
Oh,
And
there's reality in it. There's definitely reality in it for sure.
yes.
So
And
yeah,
if I'm always 5% wrong on the comp side, right? Because there is
right.
no right answer, right? Like you're always a
Yeah,
little bit wrong. If you're
yeah.
5% wrong on payroll, like bad things happen.
I like the quote.
Everybody knows about it, right?
I like the quote.
CEOs get emails right away if you are 5% wrong on payroll. So like
Oh yeah.
that
The
the
news.
error
Sometimes
is
the
just
news knows about it.
yeah, exactly. So like there's no tolerance for error on the payroll side. Like you're and the actually I shouldn't say that. There's going to be something, but like
Yeah.
you want it to be small and you want it to be rare. You
Right.
can't, perfection's not the but it's a different ball game. And I think that is sometimes for our, our core audience, which is like comp and ben people, like you forget that like the stakes are higher on
Yeah.
payroll. And let's have a little bit of understanding and grace for our payroll friends that like we can throw them under the bus if we're not careful.
The irony is, I think most of the time people look at payroll as the nerds who want to get it exactly right. Um, and payroll's looking over, going, hold my beer.
Yeah.
They're estimating on this, so I do think it is interesting. And I guess the last question I have there, Pete, do you think that personality, because right, we're human, like that person, like you do not want me to run payroll. That's where I'll start with. Like that is like I'm a think, be creative, kind of product, try it, A/B testing, all the things you would not do in payroll. As Paul's laughing, like, do you think those personalities sometimes don't align with being strategic
Mhm.
enough or thinking far enough forward? Because to be good at that, a lot of times, I think like that is a special human to just
Yeah.
continue to run payroll right every time.
Yeah, it is a very functional role. I will admit that, but I think that you're right. I think
Eh,
some of it has just been sort of cultural in that payroll has never really been asked to lead in the way that I think they're going to have to in the future. And I think that yeah, you're right. I think they've played sort of a bridesmaid's role a lot and never really stepped out to be the bride, but yet have all of the skills necessary for this future, right? I show this. I have a presentation about what the role is going to look like in the future as a payroll leader, and I think they're going to be very big four consultants to the business. Is what I think it's going
mm,
to become. Largely change agents, project management, mergers and acquisitions, that sort of stuff. But I think that when you look at this plot chart that I have, and it's a quadrant by the World Economic Forum that shows the skills that employers would most desired over the next 5 to 10 years. And if you look in that upper right corner, it's creativity, leadership, adaptability,
sure.
attention to detail, right? Technical expertise. It's just sort of on and on. And you think like, wow, those are the sort of things that I would have looked for to hire payroll leaders for in my team, right? Back in the day when I was leading payroll. Those are the characteristics I would want. All that
Mm,
emotional intelligence. I can teach them
mm,
payroll. I can't teach them those sort of attitude and positive attitude kind of things. So they're really poised for this, and I'd say HRs as well, very poised for the future in that, now they're going to have the opportunity to have the assistance of automation and being able to actually focus on predictive, preventing and helping the business. Hey, if we're going to go into this state or this city or this country or whatever, this is what we might need to think about. These are the lead time. We need to get this set up properly. So we're do it, in compliance, that sort of thing. That's the more value add. And I think that they're poised really well to do that. So what I tell payroll leaders is look, you've got to stop being led and you've got to start leading, and your data has to be a big part of how you come and what you're bringing, part of the perspective that you're bringing. And I think not everybody's skills are going to change and translate, right? And that's okay. Some will go one way and some will go another. But I think those that want to lead, I think there's a lot of opportunity now in this new age to be very technical leaders and very functional experts as well.
That is awesome. So I will kind of end that piece there because that's like such a great point to end on. Except the one thing what I always ask Pete is if you could automagically, which when I meant I'm a development term, that's a highly
Yeah.
technical term. If you could automagically fix one thing in any of HR, doesn't have to be payroll. What would it be?
I would love for HR to have a better understanding of what payroll actually does and the
Mm.
C-suite to understand, right? I think if there was a better understanding for what payroll does, what they can provide and the insights that they have, I think there would be a completely different attitude towards it and maybe a different engagement. And again, back to all the things we talked about the risks and what it means. And I think if organizations understood that, and I think they would make it more of an investment. Payroll's ultimate output to the business is really org agility, right?
Hmm.
Helping them scale, move quickly, act on things compliantly, and de-risk, right? And I think using their data in unison with other data and insights in the business is going to help with that agility. So yeah, I would love to see more folks invest in payroll and treat it draw out the ROI that's available there.
That's awesome. You have anything to add to that, Paul? Because I don't. Because that's a good answer.
No, no, yeah, I think I was going to ask a different question, but you kind of answered it already, which is, because we speak largely to a comp audience. Like, what's
Mhm.
the thing that you speak for payroll, and what would you want comp people to understand? And I think you kind of just said it,
Yeah,
which is it's almost the walk a mile in my shoes, please, because you could really understand like what I have to deal with and the possibilities if I can earn if you are willing to trust me. I
yeah,
have good information. I have insight into what's happening. Like, I love the example of the leader who's accountable for payroll and essentially workforce planning because I see how people are spending time and what that costs us.
yeah, exactly.
Like that's
Yeah,
that's a magical combination I would have never really thought of, but it makes a
it is.
ton of sense, particularly at scale.
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, look, I just think people need to understand how complicated payroll is, how
Yeah.
critical it is to just all sides, right? The business and the employee. And at the end of the day, it's a tremendous ally with great insight. So
It's an
it's
interesting, and I have the most respect for them more as I've gotten over time because it's such an interesting thing where, because people get paid, they think they understand compensation. And because payroll has traditionally, most places I've been done a great job, it can't be hard, right? Like that's
yeah,
been the equivalent. Like, the number of mistakes kind of goes with the difficulty, and payroll just gets it done. And like I said, they become their own worst enemy. You just kind of assume, like, you get thousands of people all getting the actual to the penny right every time and all the think about, I mean, just it's like when you break it down, it's kind of like as I always liken it to air travel when people complain about air travel.
yeah,
Or you're in a chair 5 miles above the earth going 500 miles an hour, like pretty freaking amazing. And so, like, to get payroll right for that many people, that many times, all in a row, and then spit out all where people's money go. And now you think about all the third party administrators and all in America, the benefit, like, it's kind of mind blowing
Yeah.
when you do get to walk. Like, I probably walked, you know, um, 200 yards, or 100 yards in their shoes and was like, I don't need to walk the rest of the mile here. Like,
Yeah.
scary. Yeah, it's
For
scary.
me, it was one parallel test in going live, right? Where you really try to walk through, well, this is what we actually paid. This is what this new system says. And
You have traumas.
the thousands of small variances that happen in
Yeah.
your first parallel run. It's like,
Oh
oh
yeah.
my gosh,
yeah.
Yeah. It's a
there
lot
is
of
a
work.
lot that happens here and a
Yeah.
lot of velocity in every pay cycle.
Yeah.
Imagine doing that job without the support of your HR or your leadership or the
Yeah.
proper resources or, I had a leader come on and talk about payroll, about there being a new system being bought and the transition happening, and payroll found out when they were starting the project kickoff. I mean, how awful, right? You've got to live with this system and no one even told you we were changing systems. Just things like that, right? I mean, it's really silly. And at the end of the day, payroll is a fantastic, fantastic resource that should be at the table anytime there's a human being involved in a business decision because of the compliance element of it and the pay element of it. So, yeah, again, just fantastic resources, fantastic skills, and great data. So tap into it.
This has been great, Pete. I will tell people, without, even though I can see you right now, so don't get a big head.
Yeah.
It's like if you're going to start on a payroll podcast, go find Pete's.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, we
you
talk way more than payroll, but yeah, HR and payroll 2.0,
Yeah, but
man.
HR and payroll, like it's a great way. It's kind of like how I started digging in.
Yeah.
What's interesting with your podcast, again, not to give you a big head, is it's more than payroll, but you realize quickly because it's payroll centric, for lack of a better term, how payroll touches everything. Because
Yeah.
every time you listen, it's kind of tying back to payroll, and you're like,
Yeah.
how's that tied back to? Oh shit, that
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
ties back to payroll. Like
Yeah. Thank you.
you kind of get this world of like walking through the shoes. So we'll post that out, Pete,
I
so
love it.
people can take a link and you guys can find them. For everyone else, give us a
Yeah.
follow as well. We'll try to get more payroll, but I really appreciate it, Pete. Thanks so much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this was
Thanks for
fun.
having me, man. Appreciate you guys. And yeah, be nice to payroll. Payroll's your friend.
That's a good, that's a great way to end. Be
Be
nice,
That's
to
right.
them.
nice. Yeah. All
Thanks,
right.
Pete.
Take care.